My comfort zone in the past has been really digging in deep, understanding the subject matter, using that to give me confidence around the thing that I was jumping into, the team that I was expected to lead. And so when I first came into this role, my first inclination was I needed to do the same thing. And I really started going deep. And quite honestly, I was showing up for meetings, and my team around me was like, "Why are you at this meeting? We appreciate that you're here, but don't you have better things to do, or different things to do, I should say."
Welcome to the listeners and viewers to the Leadership Shock podcast. This goes along with the book Leadership Shock. You can get that in the link below. Today, we're going to focus on, as we always do, leadership transitions. But in this case, we're going to talk about how leadership beliefs can really influence your authentic leadership model. And I have a special, very special guest. I have Sandy Torchia. She is the Vice Chair of Talent and Culture at KPMG, someone that I've had the pleasure of working with for the last few years and getting to know. So Sandy, welcome to the podcast.
Pete, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me to join you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So let's start with your career and how you ended up where you are now.
Gosh, how much time do we have? It's a long story, but I'll try to condense it. Pete, I've been so fortunate to have a long career, a really rewarding career, 27 years at KPMG, and across those 27 years, I've had the chance to do a lot of different things, ranging from working and living in a couple of different cities to being a lead partner on a strategic account to being the lead technology partner on one of our firm's largest audit accounts. I've had the chance to lead businesses across the firm in the US, big businesses, small businesses, and everything in between in the US, but also globally as well. And my role prior to the role that I have now was as a national managing partner of our advisory practice. And in that role, I was really focused on our advisory strategy. And throughout that entire time, I've been focused on building teams, leading teams, and really helping those teams, as well as the individuals on the teams, be the best that they could be. um, you know, 2 years ago, I had the chance to pivot from this 25-year career in consulting to leading HR for our firm, as you said, as the vice chair of talent and culture for the firm. And in this current role, I'm responsible for our talent strategy, right? So it's positioning KPMG to attract, to develop, and to retain the best and the brightest to serve our clients. And it's an amazing opportunity generally, but it's also a really amazing opportunity in the midst of everything that we're experiencing relative to our talent landscape and the rapid changes in the talent landscape. I'm also a member of our firm's management committee. And being on the management committee, I work closely with our entire management committee to really implement and develop initiatives that advance our firm strategy firm wide. So that's a little bit about the journey that I've taken to get here, Pete. I'll tell you, there's been several experiences that I've had along the way that I think have better prepared me for what I'm doing now, beginning with my very first significant leadership role. I was a relatively new partner, and I was asked to lead the practice that I was in on a national basis. So I'd been a member of this practice for a while, and I was asked to step into the leadership role nationally. And it was an area that I had a really strong technical background in. It was an area that I felt very qualified for, but it was also an area that was a little intimidating because I was now working with a team of partners that had significantly more tenure than I did, including the partner that had the role before I did now reported to me. And so that's just an example of an experience that I had that gave me a lot of the experiences and capabilities that I've brought with me to this role. And a couple of things that I did when I moved into that role many years ago was I spent a lot of time getting to know everybody, right? So understanding what makes them tick personally, what's important to them professionally, and then I leverage their strengths. So an example would be, the partner that I replaced in that role, he had an amazing depth of knowledge in the subject matter, and he had relationships in the marketplace that were really deep. And so recognizing that and allowing him and really giving him the opportunity to continue to build those relationships, leverage his subject matter expertise, enabled us to grow. So, Pete, a lot of things along the way that led me to where I am, but those are a couple of the highlights.
That's great. I mean, we want to talk about transitions today because we worked together on your transition to the vice chair of talent and culture. So I want to hold on that. But when you look at those transitions, you talked about the that transition to lead the practice. Talk about what was challenging about the transition and how you overcame it.
Yeah, I'll start by saying it was really challenging, and honestly, it continues to be challenging. And I think that's okay because that just means I'm continuing to learn and to grow. And to be completely honest, when our CEO approached me and asked me to move into this role, I wasn't really sure that it made sense for me. And a couple of reasons why I didn't think it made sense for me was I really liked the role that I had at that point in time as the national managing partner of advisory, and I honestly couldn't imagine a career outside of advisory. And if I'm being honest with myself, I probably had some doubts about taking on such a big role, such a different role. But when I was thinking about the transition in terms of whether or not I should even throw my name in the hat for the role, I spent a lot of time talking to my mentors. I spent a lot of time learning about the role, thinking about what was really important to me. And the things that were important to me were in buckets of my ability to make an impact on the firm, as well as my personal goals. And after all of that reflecting and conversations, I knew that I had a rare opportunity in front of me. And it was an opportunity to pivot to something completely different and to learn about something different. It was an opportunity to make an impact on the firm in a much broader scale. And it was a chance to be a member of the management committee. And that led me to an opportunity to be a more enterprise wide leader. And so I mentioned that the transition was challenging. It was challenging because it was a subject matter that I didn't have depth in. I had a brand new team, right? People that I hadn't worked with before. And I also had a wider remit, right? So having that enterprise wide leadership responsibility was exciting to be able to make an impact across the firm. But I now needed to lean into that to do something across our entire firm, not just in the advisory practice where I had focused before. The other thing that was challenging from a transition perspective, Pete, and this is something that you and I have spent a lot of time on, was um, being pulled in a lot of different directions. So I feel like I've been pulled in a lot of different directions throughout my career, and but now it took that to another level, and I was having to make difficult choices and different choices about how I spent my time. I had to make choices around, what are the things that mattered the most, and before I could decide what mattered the most and where I was going to spend my time, I had to figure out what those things are. And quite honestly, working through the authentic leadership model with you was something that helped me on that transition journey.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit because you said something that's really interesting, which is you moved into a role and you weren't an expert. And in fact, when you talked about like the other transition that was challenging, which was moving into the line of business, you were an expert. To talk a little bit about how you overcame that lack of expertise when you were leading a function that you didn't know. You didn't, I mean, you kind of know, but you didn't really know.
Yeah, it's a great question, Pete. And I my comfort zone in the past has been really digging in deep, understanding the subject matter, using that to give me confidence around the thing that I was jumping into, the team that I was expected to lead. And so when I first came into this role, my first inclination was I needed to do the same thing. And so I started talking to a lot of different people. I started studying HR, and I really started going deep. And quite honestly, I was showing up for meetings, and my team around me was like, "Why are you at this meeting? This is something that historically we wouldn't have expected the vice chair to be involved in. We appreciate that you're here, but don't you have better things to do, or different things to do, I should say?" And so it really that moving away from my typical MO of going deep and really being able to understand a subject matter to dealing with the competing priorities and the fact that I just didn't have time to do that anymore led me to a different way of working. And it led me to being able to give my team the rope, if you will, to be able to have the opportunity to make good decisions. I could provide the guidance and the tools that they needed to do their jobs, but also giving them that autonomy to be able to do them. I quickly learned that there were many areas where they didn't need me. They were very capable of doing it on their own. And that's great because it freed up my time to really focus on those things that were more important.
So in the authentic leadership model, as you said, we come out with like, where do you want to spend your time? And I think that's really important. So talk about that journey. Where did you end up? Where do you want to spend your time now? You've been in the role, I think, 2 years. Where do you want to spend your time, and how do you choose where you spend the time now?
Yeah, it's a great question, Pete, and I'm honestly not sure. Well, I haven't mastered it yet, right? I still have a lot to learn relative to where I'm spending my time, but it really has given me some. It's allowed me to think through where I wanted to spend my time and really comb through my calendar on a consistent basis to make those tough decisions. And so when I moved into this role, I really started thinking about what my top challenges were, and not mine as an individual as well as ours as a team. What were those top challenges? What were the things that we were trying to solve together as a team? And what were the areas that really needed me to bring my strengths to them in order to move them along? And so taking a step back and thinking about what our goals and objectives as a firm were, what our goals and objectives as a talent and culture team are, what strengths I bring to the team to make an impact, as well as what strengths do the individuals around me have to make an impact. And so that that process led me to an outcome where I can honestly say that I'm making better decisions about where to spend my time. And I'm spending my time on the areas that are going to make a bigger impact on the firm. So, making a bigger impact of the firm because I'm involved in them is kind of a gate that I use when I think about where I'm going to spend my time. It's also really knowing the team of leaders around me, the things that they're good at, the things that they're passionate about, the things that they need to learn so that they can spend more time on those areas.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, so the book is called Leadership Shock. I'm in the back of my head, I have my next book, and it's called Team Shock, because the outcome of a strong, authentic leadership model is a more functioning team. Because just like you said, you can understand where you spend your time, and therefore it can create clarity for your team on where they should spend their time. And I love the interaction that you have in that. It's not just where do you want to spend your time, it's where do we spend our time to maximize our impact. And I think that's a really powerful statement that a leader can make about how to lead teams. And this actually leads me to something else. It's sort of like the next question. In the authentic leadership model, it's where do you spend your time? And it's also how do you want to spend your time? And what makes it authentic is beliefs leaders have about leadership. And so I know you and I had some really interesting discussions about leadership beliefs. So why don't you share a little bit about like your leadership philosophy and how you like to lead teams?
Pete, this was an area of the authentic leadership model that honestly was really, really impactful to me. I mean, a lot of it was impactful, but this piece, just stepping away from the day to day and really thinking about what my leadership philosophy was and not being afraid to be honest about it. Right. And so working through the authentic leadership model, I developed kind of this purpose statement. And the purpose statement included things like tackling big challenges through my leadership of the team and having fun along the way. And thinking about the fact that for me it was as important, or honestly maybe even more important, to focus on the way that I worked as much as it was to focus on the actual work itself. And thinking about it that way was quite honestly freeing for me. And I took a step back from that and I said, I want to be the kind of leader that really does empower the team to learn, empowers the team to grow their skills, and empowers the team to grow their careers. And this blend of allowing the team to have the opportunity to make great decisions. I obviously would be there to give them the guidance, to support that they had the resources that they needed to do their jobs, and creating teams that really enjoy working together and knowing that, I'm there for them when they need me. And part of this is not only leading these teams to tackle big challenges while having fun along the way, which is that purpose that I mentioned a few minutes ago. But to do that, for me, it's all about being authentic, and being authentic is important. And so that what that means to me is being transparent. Right, at KPMG, we like to say open and honest communication. That it's really important, and being transparent is an important part of this. It's also having empathy, right? Having empathy for my team members. So really caring about them, what they want to achieve professionals, what's important to them personally. Also having the courage to make bold moves and lastly, having a high level of self-awareness of my strengths, so those things that I'm really good at, the weaknesses or the things that I really need to focus on. And so understanding that it's important to embrace my authentic self, to be authentic, enjoy the people that I work with, as well as the work itself, obviously, but leading the team in a way that we have a collective purpose. We know that balance is important, and we also want to have fun along the way while doing work that's important to the firm.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that emphasis of fun. In fact, when we had this, when we, I think, had a little bit of a breakthrough, I actually remember I was sitting at Denver Airport and we were having our call, and you were you were talking about a previous experience that you had had at the firm, which was like a description of your best team, where both performance and fun were married. Do you remember that?
I do, Pete. I remember that vividly because I have, it just gives me great feelings when I think about that team, as I shared with you. And it was several years ago when I stepped into a leadership role for the largest team that I'd ever been responsible for. And I was working with some leaders that I had known throughout the course of my career. I was working with some leaders that were brand new to me. And we were stepping into a situation where we had a business that wasn't performing as well as it could. And so we loved this business. We believed in the business and we believed in each other. And so it was a great combination where we had an opportunity to really think about what we needed to do differently to put this business on a growth trajectory. And we also had the opportunity to work together as leaders in a different way. And so I remember the very first in person meeting that we had together with that team. Like I said, some of us had relationships previously, some of us were brand new to the team. And it took different personalities on that team to get us to the point where we were opening up with each other about the things that were important to us. We were opening up with each other about the things that were going on in our personal lives. And that kind of set the foundation for a group of people that was really motivated to do good work together, in a group of people that had each other's backs. And that kind of environment where you can show up and be your authentic self, that kind of environment where that you can be vulnerable, that type of environment where you're also investing in relationships with each other and you're having fun and you know each other's families and you want the best outcome for the individuals as well as for the team and the firm itself. So it was a great connect collaboration between groups of people that genuinely cared about a business, a really tough problem that we were trying to solve, and a desire to do it together.
And that's like a source of one of your leadership beliefs, right? This idea of authenticity, this idea of fun. So talk about how you bring that now. What do you do with your teams now where you bring that to life?
Pete, a couple of things. So there was early on in my leadership of this team, the team was going through a situation where each individual was dealing with a really challenging personal situation. And I was aware of many of these situations. Some of the other team members were aware of the situations, but I said, you know what? I want to have a leadership check in with the team at this moment in time when we knew that many of us were faced with some very challenging personal situations. And so we had an in person meeting. And at the beginning of that meeting, we went through a ritual where we all checked in. And at the beginning of that check in, it was really simple. You would say, this is Sandy Torchia. I'm checking in. One thing that I'm dealing with professionally is X, Y, and Z. One thing I'm dealing with personally is X, Y, and Z. And there were no rules. You didn't have to share the deep thing that was challenging you. You could have shared, that you overslept this morning. It could have been as simple as that. It could have been as complex as some of the things that our team did share. And I'll tell you, Pete, at the end of that, everybody shared something that was really deep and personal and important. And the emotions that went through in that room, it just showed that this team was ready to commit to each other in a different way and share that deep personal feeling. And so that was kind of the beginning of building this foundation with our team. That was a while ago. That was probably over a year ago. And fast forward to where we are today, we've made we've been purposeful about getting together in person. We've been purposeful about carving out time to share what's going on, what our aspirations are, what's impacting us personally and professionally. And in fact, at our last leadership team meeting a couple of weeks ago, we've been going through a process where we're understanding our strengths and leveraging those strengths to collectively come together as a team to tackle some tough things. And as part of leveraging those strengths, we've done some more soul searching. And a member of my team came up to me afterwards and said, you know what? I've never been a part of this team when we were able to work together as well as we are today. And it was a deliberate, purposeful investment of let's all make sure that we get to know each other. Let's make sure that we understand the goals and objectives and what we're trying to accomplish as a team, and that we have some fun along the way.
That's great. I love that. Now you said ritual, the check-in as a ritual. Is that something that you guys still do? Do you still check in at meetings?
To be honest, we don't do it as much as we should. But we do. It's become something that when we are together in person, we do. We do it sometimes on our virtual teams as well. But when we bring it up and when we do it, it's not unfamiliar to folks anymore. And we don't only do it when we know there are challenges. We also do it just when it's a moment in time where we need to connect with each other. As an example, we came back from the holidays this year and we did a one word check in. We just said, as going into the new year, give us one word to describe how you're feeling right now. And it's interesting to see the words that people share at that moment in time. Then we'll do it again a month later, and it might be the same word, it might be a different word. And one word can tell you a lot about what's going on with someone.
Well, and I love that investment that's happening in the team dynamic. I was just talking today with a client who's really struggling to have to get a high performing team. The team does fine; everyone does their own thing, and when you look at how that team runs, they don't have those rituals. They jump straight into the task. Like agenda one, let's start getting after stuff. When actually, I mean, from my rugby days, I used to say, great teams don't happen on the grass. They happen away from the grass. Everyone practices, everyone plays. It's what you do away from the task that you have to do that makes you a great team. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. I think there's some great nuggets there for everyone that's listening. What are some other parts of the authentic leadership model that really stand out for you in the work that we did together?
There were several things I found very informative going through the model with you, Pete. But there was one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and that was just kind of the structure of the model. And one of the things that you asked me to think about and that you worked through with me was focusing on the value I provide. And I liked that because it was really different than focusing on my strengths. They're similar, right? But it's really thinking about the strengths that you have and how those strengths drive impact. And so I really liked that because it shifted my thinking towards leveraging those strengths for value. And I'll tell you one of the examples, and this is part of my authentic leadership model as it is documented on the piece of paper that I have. But one of my strengths that I brought into this role was just my deep knowledge of the firm, right? So being around the firm for 27 years, 25 years in the advisory practice, a lot of relationships, a lot of knowledge. But thinking about how I leverage that strength, just having knowledge of the firm in and of itself doesn't mean anything unless you do something with it. And so, how do I take that and do something with it? And the way that I leverage that into value that I can provide is by using it to remove barriers so that the team can get things done. So, that strength of deep knowledge of the firm, turning it into value is using it to remove barriers. And that's also that strength of knowledge of the firm as well as the strength of the relationships that I had. So I like that. I like that aspect of the model overall as well.
That's great. And it actually matches exactly how you talked about leading your team, which is what's the value that the team can provide, right? And where can I apply my value? And that's actually the difference between strengths and value for mine is it's contextual. Like a strength is different than a value. Strength is something that I have, a value is something that I apply, and therefore my value changes based on the role that I have. And I think you've given a great description of that. I mean, I think you're the first person that we've had on our podcast series that not only has gone, is managing and leading and growing yourself. I love the fact that you said the role that you were going to take is challenging, but that's great. And it's still challenging because that means you're still growing. But you're actually responsible for the leaders at KPMG. So talk a little bit about what KPMG is doing to develop the leaders of the firm's future.
Pete, this is a topic that is really important to KPMG, and it's not only important, but it's a big focus of ours. And so I think if you were to ask people inside of our firm as well as people outside of the firm, we have always been known for building good leaders, and that notion can be something that is an area of differentiation for our firm. When I first stepped into this role, and I still do, I spent a lot of time with CHROs. And I remember one of the very first CHROs outside of KPMG that I met with, I walked into her office, and one of the first things that she said to me was, I just want to say thank you to you for all of the great talent that has come from KPMG to join my company. And my first reaction was, this is not a great way to start this conversation. But then my second reaction was, um, that's great because that's exactly what KPMG wants to do. We want to build leaders that can go on and have successful careers, period. And those successful careers may often be at KPMG, but they might also be at organizations that are clients or targets of the firm or organizations that do good in the community. And so it's really important for us to create, build a platform where leadership skills can be developed. We just recently finished up our firm-wide talent strategy, and one of the four pillars of that strategy is something called lead at every level. And so that notion of leading at every level is all about developing a new standard of leaders at every level within the firm, and an expectation that all of our leaders are going to be responsible for cultivating the next generation of leaders. And that next generation of leaders is they should understand the aspirations of the teams that they lead, and they should make sure that they're empowering those leaders to achieve those aspirations, as well as role modeling leadership behaviors based on our firm-wide values. And so if you think about what does this leader look like, right? It's a leader who is ethical, and that means focusing on doing what's right. It's a leader who's dynamic, and that means focus on being prepared to meet the future today. It's a leader that's compassionate, and that means doing hard things in a human way. And then last but not least, a leader that's collaborative or brings others along the way. And so we've got a lot of very formal and informal mechanisms for helping individuals develop leadership skills, from, very specific programming for employees and for partners to experiential learning, where we give the individuals the opportunity to play a leadership role or to take a leadership role at a client, on a team, etc., so that they can get a wide variety of exposure to leadership skills and different leadership styles so that they can build their own style.
That's great. I mean, I think the focus that KPMG has on development is something that is, very special, especially relative to other clients that I have. And I've been fortunate enough to spend some time at the KPMG Lake House in Orlando, which is this huge investment, really, in people and leadership development. Can you talk a little bit about how Lake House, what the role that Lake House plays, and in particular the role that Lake House plays in sort of that leadership development journey?
Yeah, Pete. And for those of you listening who might not be familiar with Lake House, it is a state of the art learning and development facility that we opened just prior to COVID in Orlando, Florida. It's a place where we have sleeping rooms for 800 and training facilities for 1,200. And it really is our cultural home. So if you want to experience culture at KPMG, there's no better place to experience it than at our Lake House. But Lake House is meant to accomplish a couple of different things. One is formal learning, right? So I mentioned that we have classroom facilities for 1,200 individuals. The learning that occurs in the classrooms at Lake House can range from technical learning to more soft learning skills that are more in line with leadership development skills. You have the opportunity to learn from the people that are the best at what it is that you're trying to learn. You have the opportunity to learn in a different way, where we are collaborative, where we bring people together to accomplish a single mission. An example of that is a program that we launched about a year ago called Ready, Set, Grow. And Ready, Set, Grow was a program, Pete, you're familiar with it because you helped us build it. But Ready, Set, Grow was an opportunity to give our partners the time and space to focus on the leadership development capabilities that were important to them. So they choose what areas they're going to spend their time learning about, and then they spend time in cohorts practicing those leadership development skills. I'll tell you, when our partners first hear about Ready, Set, Grow, it's different than what they've experienced in the past. And so they might be a little intimidated by it or a little put off by it because they don't know what it is. But the reviews that we get when our partners go through this session are just amazing. They're getting an experience that takes them out of their comfort zone. They're getting an experience where they're working side by side with people that they might not already have relationships with. And they know that the firm's invested in their leadership development. So that's one of the programs that we offer at Lake House specifically to help our partners develop their leadership skills.
Yeah, the couple of things about Ready Set Grow that I think are pretty unique and have really got your leadership was really critical in this, Sandy, is it was really designed by the partners. It was sort of like an 18-month program where we asked all the partners, all 2,400 partners, what do you want? And Ready, Set, Grow comes out of that. But it's very similar to the authentic leadership model in the sense it's a system. These things work together. It looks at three areas of sort of the impact that you want to make, authenticity, right? Kind of what partner do you want to be? And then sustainability. Are you able to be that partner over the long term? And those three things act as a system, just like the authentic leadership model acts as a system. So great program, very happy and to be involved. And honestly, one of my career highlights when it comes to like leadership development. I think Ready, Set, Grow has just been wonderful. And it's one of the reasons why I get to go down to Lake House and see the impact of our work together coming to life. So that's great. Sandy, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I heard the idea of authenticity being so important, which is obviously a really key part of the authentic leadership model. The value, that was something that you brought up, and then this idea of fun being an important part of a team leader is three takeaways. So I just want to remind everyone that you can get Leadership Shock on Amazon. The link is in the notes. There are episodes that are now available on your favorite podcasting platform. And I just want to thank Sandy again for your time.
Pete, thanks for including me, and thanks for all of your help on my leadership journey. I very much appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's been a wonderful journey. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks to Sandy, and we will see you next time.